precise structure of migration control. The one that when it comes to Africans, the laws are stiffer. Then we go to the fourth novel, which is set in Ethiopia during the invasion of Ethiopia by the Mussolini's regime, that is the Italian regime in the 1930s. It is a novel that explores the colonial invasion of Ethiopia that triggered displacement and forced migration. And we are seeing in that novel the enduring legacies of heinous experiences of Ethiopians forced to migrate from their country. And the ethical question reoccurring here with the historical inequities, which is the disruption of cultural and personal identities of African people by European powers that made them to go looking for better hope somewhere in Europe. Then discussions. The whole of this presentation rallies around migration ethics and historical inequities. And in these novels that we have explored in this presentation, when it comes to migration ethics, we will see discriminations, the erasure of people's cultural identities, experiencing lack of access to opportunities, the unwelcoming attitude of host societies. Migrants are valued solely for their economic contributions. The host communities do not have any moral responsibility to all migrants, and then enforcing restrictive and dehumanization immigration laws. And the historical inequities has run through these novels, which shows that colonial exploitation resulting in global economic disparities, colonial economic policies that left African nations dependent on Western economies, and then imperialist aggression like the Italian invasion of Ethiopia as a catalyst for migration, economic decline, and political instabilities that are rooted in the colonial past of these African nations. And what is the global implication? The issues that we have explored in these novels underscore the need for global policies that address the root causes of migration, politically, historical injustices that have left many African nations with economic instabilities and conflict. Again, migration should not just be treated solely as a national issue, but as a global responsibility, requiring policies that ensure fair treatment of migrants regardless of their economic status, and call for policies that promote inclusion, equity, and justice. Our conclusion is that postcolonial African literature is expected to challenge discriminatory migration policies and advocate for migrant rights and justice in a global immigration system. The case studies we have done here have exposed the ethical dilemmas faced by migrants. They critique systemic injustices in migration policy. They reframe colonial history with its lasting impact on migration. The lessons from this novel emphasize the need for renewal of approach to migration. And our recommendation here is that more interdisciplinary research that combines literature, history, and ethics in understanding migration issues should be encouraged. We have also recommended the advocacy for inclusion of African literary voices in global migration discussions. Thank you very much for listening. This is where I withdraw the curtain on presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, presenter, because you did so wonderfully well. 35 minutes, and in fact, you did less than 40 minutes far. So well done.
Thank you.
I can see hands already up as the presentation was entry conclusion, all hands up. So let's start with Professor Obad, whose hand I saw first, then followed by Professor Akinwale, and followed by, the third person has removed his or her hand. I saw 3 hands just now. So if the person is ready to part of it again, I'm sure the person will raise his hand or her hand. So let's go to you, sir, Professor Obad.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to say hello to my Oga, Professor Olupemi Peters. Sir, it is very good to see you again once more, although we'll be seeing about 2 days from now when I come for the convocation. I also like to say hello to the old man, the oldest man in National Open University of Nigeria, the specialist on dead white philosophers, Professor Sogolo. Professor Sogolo is a father, a grandfather, and a specialist on dead white philosophers. And I want him to. And I would also like to congratulate Paparga. He is the first person in my participation. I'm not saying in all the presentation, but in my participation, the first person to stay within limits. All the others tend to go on and on and on until up to over 1 o'clock, but he was the first person to stay with the limits. And I think his time management is absolutely wonderful. I would like to congratulate him. Dr. Paparga helped us when we took a trip to Niger Republic. When I was the vice chancellor, we needed somebody who could speak French. But now, if we are going back to Niger Republic, we don't need him because Niger Republic 2 days ago declared that Hausa is their national language. And so I will be the person to interpret what was going on. They no longer care about French. They now introduce Hausa as the national language, the only country in West Africa, in the whole world to do that. So for Berger, we'd like to thank you very much for your kind efforts and things like that. Now, to the presentation, I think the presentation is fresh. This is the precious presentation I have seen in a very long time. But the problem that I see is that not of the presenters, but of Professor Aneto. I think, Professor, there is a need for us to provide clear guidelines on presentation of the slides. This is because people tend to overload their slides. You just cut and paste from Word and paste it into the slide program, and what at the end of the day, what you have is an overloaded slide. For instance, his abstract is just simply too overloaded. I mean, nobody's going to read all that. The whole idea behind the PowerPoint is to have maximum of 5 specific points. You don't even need an abstract in a presentation. I mean, you need abstract statement of the problem, theoretical framework, and all that stuff if you are writing a paper for publication. But if you are presenting a paper, what the audience, you have 20 minutes. It's only here that people give 40 minutes. You go to any international conference, it's 15 to 20 minutes, and those 15 to 20 minutes get to the point. That's why it is called PowerPoint. Get to the point so that your PowerPoint will talk for you rather than you having to go over and over again. That said aside, I think it's a very exciting, very exciting presentation, and I like it. I like it very much. Now, my issue is he was talking about post-colonial literature, which is fine, but his central framework of post-coloniality was much more recent. Instead of going back to the founding fathers of post-colonial theory, which was Edward Said in his Orientalism novel and Homi Bhabha. These 2 guys were the ones who really created this consciousness about post-coloniality, post-colonial history, in order to indicate the contempt within the colonial society has for the conquered races and things like that. So I think if you are presenting this for publication, your peer reviewers will point out the fact that you really need to go back to the origin of post-colonial theory in contemporary times, and that was Edward Said. But what I really love, in fact, I even recorded I noted that seemed to be a problem with the paper. Then in the next slide, he sorted that problem out. I had wanted to see examples of postcolonial treatment of these issues in a novel, and he did that with the 4 examples. That's it. But the problem with the 4 examples is that 3 of them are all based in America. All of them, 3 are based in America, and 1 was about displacement brought about by colonial invasion. There are other displacements brought about by colonial invasion. The British conquered Nigeria, the Germans were in Namibia and all the other places, and these are some of the things we'd like to see. What happened in those places? Not just simply Ethiopia displaced by migration, and not that people just simply travel to the United States. Why? Is the United States a low-hanging fruit? I would have loved to see this kind of a novel treated in Italy, for instance, in Germany, in Poland, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Venezuela, I mean, in other places. Everybody's going to America because America is a low-hanging fruit. And most of the migrants who go to America because they already had somebody to open the door for them. They had somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and they're able to get there. But then the postcolonial treatment, the treatment of the postcolonial subject, you can't even call it postcolonial in America because Americans never conquered anybody, at least here in Africa. So, but we're looking at migrants in London. And migrants in London have a connection to colonialism because the British colonized Nigeria. So we would like to see how the migrants effectively try to use that colonial link in order to either gain a further advantage or disadvantage. But then you look at the novels that look at American migration, and I don't think that is very, very, very typical of the issues of postcolonial insertion of migrants. And these migrants, let's look at what the plots of the novels. Do the migrants bring in additional value to the United States? Do they bring in an additional value that will make them more accepted? Let's take a look at Indians. Most Indians who migrate to the United States, they normally go there with a particular skill set. The head of Microsoft right now is an Indian. The head of FBI right now is an Indian. The wife of the grand. So I would have loved to see an example of those who are treated. There are migrants who were treated badly, and then there are migrants who were also treated good, and these migrants made it. Like in Poland, a lot of members of the parliament in Poland were Nigerians. I have seen them. I have talked to them. So we need to search the literature and see all that thing. So I would have loved to see global examples in literature about postcolonial migration from that. For instance, the Turkish migrants to Germany, they made good. The Germans went to Turkey and brought in a lot of people, and then when they brought them in, they promised citizenship to them. At the end of German restoration or whatever it is, they wanted to take them back, and the Turkish said, "No, you promised to give us citizenship, so we're not going back anywhere." A similar thing happened in East Africa. When the British went to India and brought in a lot of laborers from India in order to work on the East African railway system, the East Africans were given British citizenship, but living the Indians were given British citizenship, but living in East Africa. When Idi Amin came up with his policies that made them very difficult for the Indians to stay, where did they go? They had British passports, so most of them migrated to England. So these are some of the issues I love the idea of the novels dealing with postcoloniality. But let's look at the successes and the failures of postcolonial migration. It's not all that bad. There are people who migrated from Nigeria to United States, and they were very successful. And when you go to America and you speak with American accent, it's not that you want to abandon your identity. It is because that's the only way people can communicate with you. That's the only way they can understand you. I was in the US for a conference, and I was in a restaurant asking for water. I said, I would like to have a bottle of water. And the guy who was providing this couldn't understand what I was saying. Until the person in front of me, an American young man, looked at me. I was wearing my Hausa traditional dress, looked at the person providing the water and said, he wants water. And I can't say water. I just simply can't start saying, I would like to have water. Because to me, it is not water, it is water. So you speak in American accent, not because you want to abandon your African identity, because that's the only way the Americans can understand you. Your problem is when you come back to Africa and then you go to a pure water seller and say, hey, oh yeah, give me water. You know, the pure water seller will not understand what I say. Okay, what do you want? Water. I want water. You're not talking to an American, you're talking to an African. So the point I'm talking about is that issues of identity are that if you decide to leave your African environment and migrate to another place, then you have to start to decide whether you want to forego your own identity or whether you want to adopt the identity of your host. This is the problem that Syrian immigrants based in Germany, a lot of Syrian immigrants go to Germany because of the war at that time, and then they started imposing their own values on German women, demanding that the German women should dress properly, but they're not in Syria. So why should we be asking that German women should not wear pants, hot pants? They should not wear skirts or something like that because they're exposing their body. So I think, Dr. Farberga, your paper is wonderful. I really, really like it. I like the clear-cut theoretical framework. I like this migration ethic. I like it. I like that. My biggest problem is with your samples, the samples of literature that you analyze. I think there should have been a more diverse literature. 3 of them all talking about migration to America and so on. When America has never colonized any African state, I would have loved for you to pick up an American case study, British case study, Indian case study, whatever it is. I mean, there are a lot of Nigerians in India. There are a lot of Nigerians in Sudan. Okay, like for instance, there is a whole book on Hausa in Sudan. Wow, migrants in Sudan. So they go there. So we tend to look at the global north, but forgetting about the global south in our migration studies. And yet there is a lot of rich data about global south. We tend to believe that the evil things about migration only happen in global north, that they don't happen in global south, but they do. I would love to see how are Nigerian migrants treated in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. I would like to see that. I would like to see how Nigerian immigrants cope with the language barriers in Burkina Faso, in Benin Republic. Those are the kind of things that talk to us as African. And I would have loved to see a literature that deals with all this. And if that literature doesn't exist, create it. You are a literary person. Create it. You are now opening a vista for exploration and development in African literary studies. I'm making, therefore, in my view, a very, very significant contribution. I think, more or less, that is my observation, because I want to give other people a chance to also say something. Thank you very much. And once more, wonderful. This is the first presentation that really energized me. I can see Professor Sogolo raising his hand. Maybe when I mentioned the old man and the dead white philosophers, that gingered him to come in. So once more, thank you very much, Doctor. And thank you, Gloria.
Okay, thank
Neto,
you very much.
my Vice Chancellor, thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Thank you. Well done. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, sir. That was another lecture, actually. And I was wondering that the presenter and my former VC, I don't know who did the presentation. Well done, sir. Really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Professor Akinwale, over to you, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, the director. I also greet former Vice Chancellor and the present Vice Chancellor for providing inspirational leadership. So first, I want to thank the presenter for this excellent topic. So the ontology of the presentation is very fascinating. So, but I want to suggest the need to modify the topic, because the presenter listed the topic as Postcolonial African Literary Kaleidoscopes. But in the course of the presentation, he made reference only to 4 postcolonial African novels. So that therefore means that the topic requires a slight adjustment, because the post-colonial African novels are quite different from African literary kaleidoscopes. So the phrase post-colonial African literary kaleidoscopes is broad, and so I recommend that the topic can be adjusted as follows. So you can say exploration of migration ethics and historical inequities in post-colonial African novels. I think this one will be more direct. Or if you don't want to use that, you can say representation of migration ethics and historical inequities in post-colonial African novels. So this is because the presentation is mainly based on the data extracted from those 4 post-colonial African novels. So that's my comment on the topic. So I also have a slight comment on the theoretical framework. So because in the course of the presentation, the presenter mentioned a very important issue, which is the disruption of cultural identities of Africans by European colonial powers. So we need a theory that we explain that, especially a theory that is rooted in African indigenous knowledge. So, and I want to recommend theory of Africology. So when I was in Addis Ababa, I met the proponent of this theory. His name is Professor Nabudere. He was the former Vice Chancellor of Marcus Garvey University. So I think it's of blessed memory now. So, but it's among the Pan-Africanists that try to revive the indigenous knowledge system of Africa. So, and I think this, your topic, this your presentation is raising concern about the negative impact of colonialism on African culture and identity. And the 2 theories you are currently using tend to originate from the West. So there is need for an inclusion of a theory that will amplify the African indigenous knowledge system, and that will serve as a baseline. We need to see the originality of Africanism and Africanity. That will show us, okay, this is the way it is, and this is the way it has become as a result of cross-cultural contact, and how such cross-cultural interaction has affected the template of African culture and identities. So that's the reason for suggesting the inclusion of that theory. And in your conclusion, you also noted that you are advocating for inclusion of African voices. So that kind of recommendation also make the inclusion of a theory that is rooted in African indigenous knowledge system necessary. So finally, I want to make a brief comment on your methodology. Is it possible for you to specify the scope of post-colonial African novels? You have selected 4. So can you give us the geography of 16 post-colonial African novels, out of which 4 were selected? It is also important to give reasons for the inclusion of those 4 novels, and you need to also provide the rationale for the exclusion of some other novels, which possibly may also be relevant to the subject matter of migration ethic and historical inequities. Or are you saying that it's only 4 post-colonial African novels that are of relevance to migration ethics and historical inequities? If that is the message, please kindly educate us. So thank you very much, and we look forward to receiving your article in the journal at the center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your contribution. Let me quickly call Emeritus Professor Sogolo before I go back to Professor Abdallah Badam. Emeritus, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. Our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu, but I don't know why you keep talking about philosophy and dead people. And yet you are doing philosophy and you are a living human being. Are you dead? I mean, you are in philosophy, you are a philosopher. So please, ideas don't die. Human beings die. Ideas don't die. So there's no question of we study the ideas of dead people. Philosophy is a living discipline. Now to the paper, I just want to make one small point. One that has to do with historic inequities. Inequities is a moral concept in a sense. I don't know what that really, how that is different from immorality or something evil. There are terms that are almost equivalent to iniquity, but the choice of the word iniquity is what really I feel a little bit curious about that because I'm not in literature, and people in literature are not very much used to defining terms like those of us in philosophy. Otherwise, we would start by saying this is what I mean by iniquity. But I think it's the paper I've listened to is very interesting. Congratulations. It just happened to be a presenter from my department. And that's one reason I thought I had to really participate in this this particular event. Thank you very much, Director, for being so interested in my participation, and I'm glad I'm able to participate from here. And I promise I will continue to participate when I return to Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your contribution and your comments. I'm sure the presenter will give a response later. Let us hear Professor Abdallah Abadamu. His hand has been up. Over to you, sir. Let's hear what's...
Okay, I still going back to my jibe about dead white philosophers, and Professor Sokolo keeps insisting that I'm a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher. I don't even know what philosophy is, but I know that it was Professor Sokolo and Eric Omazu who twisted and almost broke my arm into presenting a philosophy BA philosophy program in Noun, and I was doubtful whether there's anybody in his right mind who actually wants to study BA philosophy in this contemporary artificial intelligence period. But there you are, and I think they have about 5 students also. So congratulations to those 5 students who are in philosophy. My comment is on what Professor Akin Wale said about an alternative theory to postcolonial theory for the presenter's theoretical framework. I think the theoretical framework that he used was perfect enough for what he wanted to do, for the data that he has. He was dealing with postcoloniality. What is postcoloniality? It is the impact of colonial policies on African or conquered or colonized systems. And he decided to pick up, the society that has been completely rearranged as a result of colonialism. Imagine if colonialism has not happened. Imagine if the British have not conquered Nigeria in 1901 or whatever it is. Imagine if Nigeria has not been united from north and south of the country. Imagine what would have happened to us. How would we have been different from what we are now? And I think he was looking at the contradictions and the disjunctures caused by colonialism, and particularly for people who decide to leave Africa and then migrate to other places. And I'm not really sure if you can continue calling it post-colonial. So that is why his idea of African indigenous colonial system does not really sit well. Currently, I'm working on migrants, Hausa migrants in North Africa, North African countries of Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. I'm also looking at Hausa immigrants in Saudi Arabia, particularly women, because these people keep coming up with short videos on TikTok explaining their horrible experiences. And I want to see the relationship between the experiences of Hausa migrants in North Africa and Arab world and those in United States and so on. So I think the post-colonial theory that created disruptions and disjunctions in African societies and eventually led to ineffective ruling systems in Africa. That's why we have all these coups and counter coups and so on. That is why during every election cycle, there is a lot of rigging and so on. That is why when officials are given power, instead of focusing their attention on developing societies, they focus their attention on chopping and stealing as much money as they could before they leave power. And now, some of these forces were caused by colonialism, and some of them were caused by our own perception of responsibility and power within our societies. For instance, I was a vice chancellor, and people keep coming up to me asking for money. Why would I get the money? I mean, the money I have is my own salary. I only have my own salary, but people are expecting me to just steal money and then give it to them. I just simply know how it works. So if you are a politician, if you are a commissioner, if you are whatever it is, people expect you to steal money and do and then give it to them, just like that. And when they arrest you and they look you up, everybody just simply run away. Is this still post-colonial, or has post-colonial now transformed into neo-colonial? So these are some of the things that I think his paper should debate on, rather than, in my view, focusing attention on African indigenous system, which is not very, very well known and not well established. Postcoloniality was established by Edward Said, and this well-established framework works in almost every society. So we're not looking at, unless he was looking at migration within, like for instance, like I said, if he's looking at migration from Nigeria to Ghana, to Sierra Leone, to Liberia, then the African indigenous knowledge system framework might work. But the moment you start looking at former global north countries, and then those global north countries were basically responsible for our situation at the moment through their colonial interference, through their slave trade, 300 years of slave trade, and then about another 200 years of imperialism. That has created a disjunction in African society. And if post-colonial literatures want to show the extent of this disjunction, that's okay. But you can show this disjunction without necessarily going outside of Africa. Kwai Arab, for instance, the beautiful ones are not yet born, is a post-colonial critique of the society. And that works very well. So you don't have to go outside of Africa to see post-colonialism in effect. Same thing was Hala by Osman Sembani. And it's French. Paparga, you are a French person. Osman Sembani's works are all basically post-colonial, but they're dealing with Africa and contradictions of Africa. African Francophone cinema is the only one that deals with post-coloniality and the disjunctions brought about by colonial invasion. So if we are going to use the African indigenous system, then we have to look at that disjunction within Africa, circulation within Africa, particularly in Anglophone and Francophone countries. So I think we need to debate more and more in the future, not necessarily now, about the efficacy of the African indigenous knowledge system as an effective post-colonial theory to understand post-coloniality. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution. I can see that Professor Tijani is here online. I'm surprised that he has not contributed to this hot gist. Professor Tijani, good morning, good afternoon.
Director, Professor Tijani is a post-colonial immigrant to the United States.
I can't hear you, sir.
No, they can hear me now. He is a post-colonial immigrant. So he is a living example of post-coloniality in the United States. So I think he should contribute and see whether he agrees with Chimamanda's perception of Americana. Is he an Americana? Well, he used to be. I mean, when I was there, during those online wahala with Professor Okebukola, he tried to put up his American accent, and the chairman of Congress said, no. I mean, don't give us that. I'll yank you off. So he has to stop and revert to being Nigerian. And so we want to know whether he should share with us whether the post-colonial immigration process described by Dr. Paperga is really true reflection, or just simply sprinkled with the imagination of the writers. Hello, I'm done.
Sorry, sir. I'm with you in spirit, because I'm with the Nigerian Academy of Letters. I'm at the event, and I'm just listening in. And that is why I've been so silent. I actually also joined late. But I heard all that he said about post-colonialism. My intervention will be post-presentation, and I will reach out to the presenter. I'm at the National Academy of Letters
Okay,
event.
thank you so much. Okay, that's okay. Professor Monioluwa Olaniji, my former DVC, TIR, Technology Innovation Research. You want to join us in this discourse? I want to hear from you. All the men have been talking. Let a woman talk at least. Over to you, ma.
Thank you very much, Director Professor Aneto. Thanks for the recognition. I want to congratulate Dr. Sai for his presentation. But my observation aligns with Professor Adamu's first submission. So there were some features I had expected to see because I'm not an art person, not a linguist. But when you look at the topic, you like.
Professor Akinwale's hand, is it the former one or is just put it up? I'm not sure what's happening.
The current one, I just want to clarify briefly.
Okay, so over to you if you can hear us.
Okay, yes, thank you, ma. So what I was saying, I'm not asking him to replace the two theories he has adopted. I'm only recommending an addition. So in order to fill the gap, Professor Abdallah, sir, you cited a practical example of when you return to Nigeria, you should no longer call water water. So that's part of the reason why the two theory that is using now should be complemented with a theory that is rooted in African indigenous knowledge system. Because the whole discourse is around the cross-cultural conversation. So African culture on one hand, and the new culture that is trying to displace the African cultural identities on the other hand. So the theory I'm recommending for inclusion, not alternatives, sir. So I'm recommending that his theoretical framework will be stronger if he had this theory of Africology as the number 3 theory in his theoretical framework. And this inclusion is going to fill a gap because that theory will give him an opportunity to present a baseline information about the African beliefs, about their culture, about their identities, about their knowledge system, so that we can see the post-colonial, the impact that colonialism is creating on the African culture. So thank you, sir, for your kind comments and reference. I really appreciate learning from you all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see that must be Dr. Helen, am I right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Over to you.
Good afternoon.
That's a philosopher, active philosopher wants to talk now.
Good afternoon, profs. Good afternoon, everyone. I usually enjoy listening into this discussion. And Dr. Sai, thank you for the presentation. My comment is on a very lighter mode, given Professor Adamu's comment. Thank you, sir, for approving the establishment of Department of Philosophy. The current acting head. I want to just give you some situation reports. We have about 300 students in philosophy. They are not just 5. And artificial intelligence the ethics of artificial intelligence is central to philosophy, or philosophy is central to ethics of artificial intelligence. And with the kind permission of the management, and through the activities coordinated by the department, last year we had 8-week workshop on how to integrate AI into teaching and research for higher education lecturers in Nigeria. And we recruited about 300 and more than about 200 of them finished. Just this March, through the activities coordinated by the department as well, we had a seminar for all Noun students in all the 4 Saturdays in March, starting from March 8th, divided into faculties, upskilling our students on how to make use of ethics, how to make use of AI ethically and responsibly in their research. Then in February, the university hosted visitors from the United States who came to deliver a 2-day workshop to selected academics on how they can make use of AI in their research and teaching in a responsible, inclusive, safe, and ethical manner. So I just thought that I should hint at this. It seems, Professor Abdallah, you want to know a few things about what has been happening in the department and how buoyant and flourishing and relevant discourse in philosophy is.
Thank you for promoting
contemporary
philosophy.
AI. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm happy.
Thank you so much for promoting
happy.
philosophy. But let me just quickly address you, Dr. Helen. You only come around when Faculty of Arts people are presenting. So be more liberal now. When you see any,
no, Prof, I come when others are presenting.
So
just don't comment.
So make sure you are there so that we can always appreciate philosophy more with your presence. Thank you so much, and I like that defense you put up for your program, because the truth is that I know philosophy is waxing stronger and stronger in NOUN. That I know. So well done. Kudos to you, Doctor. Well done.
Yeah. Okay. Allow me to also say kudos to her. I was shocked when she said they have 300 people.
I can see.
And I said, why will 300 people want to study philosophy? Why will 300 people want to study philosophy? But I'm glad at least they are getting modern with all this AI and philosophy, because now AI is in everything. Even if you have now include AI and Amala, AI and Semo, AI, they are pushing AI into everything now. Even if it doesn't fit in, they'll have to force AI into it. So we're looking forward to a presentation from philosophy, AI, and Amala with Okorosu. Thank you. Well done, HOD.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Maybe the presentation would also include telling us what philosophy could do for us beyond the abstract level. Because Prof said that why would 300 people study philosophy? So we can do that. Thank you very much for the challenge.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, let me give Dr. Ejuko Nemo chance, and then Professor Tijani will top it all up. So Dr. Ejuko Nemo, over to you.
Good evening all.
It's not evening here. We are in Nigeria, and it's not happening.
Can you hear me? Good evening, ma. Good evening, sirs. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. Maybe because I want to speak on the cultural crash. That's why I'm calling evening. Good afternoon, all. Yes, I want to congratulate the presenter on his presentation, and the 4 literature. The 4 novels you actually brought out, I've not read any of them, but from the title, we have a change of name, Americano. I want to assume that what the author of those novels would have written would be life abroad, life in America, quite different from the life in Africa. Like Chiamanda is in Nigeria, different from life in Nigeria. I want to assume that. And you actually pictured something like that because you mirrored on cultural crash, where the people who travel abroad now have to behave in a certain way. And the former Vice Chancellor, Professor Andala, said something about that, to emphasize on that too. Why they have to behave in a certain way is that what would they now do when they have to come back to Nigeria? I know that's a matter of choice. Just as Professor Andala said, wherever you are, when you're in the US, starting from your dressing, nobody needs to tell you to actually cover up when you're in winter period. Because if you don't, you're going to freeze to death. We have had stories like that, news like that before. But by the time you come back home, you don't need anyone to tell you that if you dress in your winter coat, you suffocate. You understand? So that's for that. That's a cultural clash. Now, I expected, as we're talking and reviewing those novels, I expected you to highlight some of the challenges. Fine, you mentioned jobs where they are being exploited, but the Americana in that novel, Chiamanda's novel, what were the challenges that that person actually faced? I don't know if it's a fiction. I don't know if it was actually, there was some funny aspect to it, but what were those challenges that when African migrants migrate abroad, America specifically, because that was the area you actually use very well, what are those challenges that they face that is different from African culture? Looking at cultural crash, those challenges they face, maybe emphasizing more on them. And there's one trend that we notice now. It's not just Africans or Nigerians specifically that have traveled abroad that are now beginning to copy this accent. This may be beyond your scope, your work scope. If you go to some of our schools today, you see them learning phonics. You see how children have not crossed the border of wherever. Some have not even left their state. They are being forced to learn how to speak like Americans. So it's becoming a trend now. So even having these people that are facing this cultural crash, having them coming back to the country and wanting to speak or behave like Nigerians, they may not even want it. But I still go back to my first comment. It is a matter of choice. So maybe you need to highlight some of these little challenges in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have the floor now?
Okay, Prof. I think she's frozen, so you can continue.
There are two things.
I'm okay, sir.
Okay, you are finished. All right, fine. So over to you, yes, Prof. Sir. Professor.
Okay. Thank you very much. There are two areas that I would like to speak to. I am not here to review Chimamanda's work, but I'll only simplify and summarize thus. It is as much post-colonial as it is a rendition, a practical rendition of W.E.B. Du Bois' double consciousness, as well as Joseph Harris' triadic relationship. Meaning wherever Africans, in this case, and as at yesterday, my students showcased that of the Japanese in Peru, of all places, that they try to recreate themselves, their culture, their customs, their way of life. They nonetheless have challenges in the case of Americana in terms of adaptation to the new homeland. But the parents, oftentimes, whether they are Yorubas, Igbos, or, well, maybe some element of the Hausa Fulani that chose not to go back. Very, very few, in any case, will always recreate, themselves and impose on their children. But there is no way you will speak, act like a typical African American or white American. In fact, you have a double jeopardy because you do not belong. Just like they will tell you somewhere in Kogi State that you do not belong, or somewhere in Lagos that you do not belong, or somewhere in Kano that you do not belong, notwithstanding your birth certificate reading Kano General Hospital or Sokoto General Hospital. That is just the unfortunate, the downsides of our federalism, so-called. Having said that, I want to also speak to the issue of the so-called artificial intelligence. Interestingly, I just spoke at the Nigerian Academy of Letters, where Professor Ishaq Oloyede The JAM registrar is the chairman of that occasion. We usually have a monthly presentation, and the presenter today is also Professor Yakubu Shefu. And guess what? It's about artificial intelligence. And what, in my opinion, and in a post, comment discourse that is still ongoing, I have to step out and just mute or try to reduce the volume on the other side, is the fact that we are making a big error. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. And I'm looking forward to a sound roundtable to discuss. It is human intelligence. That robot, that blockchain, that ChatGPT will not do anything except you and I put in. So there must be an input by a living thing, you can't move. This TV will not work if I didn't turn it on. So we must begin to actually call it what it is to be relevant, particularly those of us in the humanities, so-called. And that is one of the struggle when we started this Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. Some skeptics on campus even said, oh, I don't belong, that is humanities, what are you people doing? But today they can see the interdisciplinarity in content and discourse as of today, okay? So for artificial intelligence, and I love the fact that you introduced intelligence in the philosophy. As I was telling a colleague in the Department of History, given the Trumpist madness that is ongoing in the States, that they need to be innovative, be creative, Philosophy and human intelligence will be a proper name, and I'm ready to debate it. Peace studies and human intelligence is a proper name. Substitute human intelligence for artificial intelligence. And I will justify it just as we corrected Oshefu a few minutes ago. He used ChatGPT when it first came out, and he said, tell me about Yakubu Oshefu. And ChatGPT, of course, said, oh, Yakubu Oshefu is a medical doctor in Massachusetts, blah, blah, blah. And he said, in his own words, you are wrong. He did it another time. And the thing said, oh, he's a professor in Maiduguri. The guy has never taught in Maiduguri. So what he did eventually was to upload some of his publications online. And he now went back. And he now said, oh, Yakubu Oshefu is a professor of history, Benue State University, deputy vice chancellor, yalla, yalla, yalla. And I told everybody, that is human intelligence. The back end is us. The machine cannot work. And we did it some years back, as I said some few minutes ago in my own intervention. Between 2011 and 2017, before I came to now, on my way returning, we did series of workshops on pedagogy. So our advice philosophy, now that we are teaching, there's an element of teaching that we call facilitation at NOUN. We must, in our intervention, either through the methodology or what have you, try to infuse an element of retooling ourselves to make our field more relevant, so that we will not be treated as a second class. There's nothing bad in offering philosophy, offering history. Peace studies, for instance, did not emerge. It was actually created by a historian at Ibadan. He read history. There was no PhD in peace studies during my time. But we did excellently, and we are doing excellently. We are at NOUN, producing this and supervising PhDs in peace studies. But the root of it is history. So it is now your responsibility, our responsibilities, to showcase that we are relevant to STEM. I have always been an advocate of STEM, not STEM. Art, or STEM H, the humanities generally. And then in presentation, as we did in 2017, digital humanities. That was long before TED Fund gave a Center of Excellence tag to that center at the University of Lagos. So the relevance of our field requires our going back to the drawing table and making a sense out of it. The same thing with postcoloniality. It's just the European, way of confusing us. You're talking about biographical pedagogical discourse that I will quote Abdallah, quote Eneto, quote Moni Olua before quoting Samuel Johnson, Samuel Huntington, because somebody must have done something. There must be a way. So we must have a decolonization of our minds, of a decolonization of our thought, a decolonization of the way we do things, so that the issue of whether theories and what have you. Let me round up by saying that I personally will appreciate if you go back and look at the record, look at the way Professor Adamu presented his paper that was later published at this center, this platform, the way Professor Sogolo presented. I'm giving you two examples. You will see a difference. I do not, and I hope we will not continue to be having, as much as it is a good research and what have you, the audacity to share knowledge, a presentation that looks like you're defending your doctoral thesis. I have this objective. I have these theories. I'm looking at these questions. No. I don't think that is the way. That is not the art of presenting papers. And I have to say this today because I've been bottling it up. And if I'm wrong, I'm willing to learn. But I commend the presenter for coming, and I commend the chair, the HOD, of that philosophy, for telling us that the innovation is there, and for breaking the record of 300. When I was sent to Gariki to round up, they had limited number of students. But within a year, we challenged even Duse Alaji. That small place, it has to do with that person, the humanity, the people that are working there, the customer service that would drive that studentship, that would drive that retention, that would lead to success, and then referral by your students. And I thank you for listening to my ranting, if you see it as a ranting. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you, Professor Tijani, for your contribution.
Thank you,
think this paper has really stirred up a lot of discussion, and it is because it's a good paper. When a paper is good, people bring in so many dimensions of that paper, and I think it means that Dr. Sai did a good work. But then we will now allow Dr. Sai to respond to the comments, because I had asked him to make sure he was writing down people's comments and questions, so that at the end he will now give a response. So, Dr. Sai, are you there?
Yes, Prof. I am available.
Yes.
Prof.
So please let us hear from you the different comments and questions one by one, and quickly go through them so that we call it a day. Thank you so much.
I will start from the bottom up. I think Professor Tijani's comments, intervention, is basically general and not a very specific question to me. I think you will agree with me on that. All I will do is to thank him very much for some of these cardinal issues he has raised about knowledge generally, especially in the area of philosophy and artificial intelligence. Then I go to Dr. Idekoje, the lady, sorry. I didn't get the name very well. She talked about my inability to provide detailed examples of the challenges of the characters in the novels that I have selected I'd be facing. I would like to say that in a presentation like this, usually there is no time to put all these things on the, how do you call it, PowerPoint slides. But in the body of the paper, in the presentation, in the main text, these things, when I submit it to you, these things, even if I have not provided enough from her own advice, I will make sure those details, at least 1, 2, are provided. So I thank her for that observation. Dr. Helen Oledeju, the HOD of philosophy, thank you very much for informing the House about the progress in your department. We appreciate you in the department seriously. I think with your performance, I accept the fact that anything a man can do, a lady can do better. Thank you. The third comment, the third thing I would say is about my emeritus professor in the faculty, Professor Sogolo. I actually talked about inequities, not iniquities, inequities, because his own question was on iniquities, which is not what I presented. Is inequities, which is almost, how do you call it, close to inequalities, not iniquities as sins. So for that, it is only the correction I will make, that is inequities and not iniquities. Then the second comment from my very colleague in the how do you call it, in the Center of Excellence. Incidentally, I didn't take his name. I looked at all the things you have said. Much of what I would have said about the theories, our father in the house, Professor Abdallah Adamu, has already taken that defense on my behalf. Because as far as these issues are concerned, post-colonial theory has been one of the best theories to explain issues like this. But as he has said, his is a suggestion that if I add the third theory, it will, to complement the strength of this presentation, it will be much better. So I will discuss it with him on a personal note so that I can get to understand this very well. And even if I do not include it in this paper, I could include it another day somewhere. Thank you. Then to the former Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu, I have acknowledged all your comments, especially on the guidelines about PowerPoint presentation. From the way I prepared it, even myself, I knew that there was problem with the PowerPoint presentations. Many of them, I saw that they were overloaded, but I became weak after doing so many things to start editing to reduce the load in the every of the slides. But I take your observation against next presentation. Thank you, sir. And then about the post-colonial theory, that it is too recent. I believe that the post-colonial theory is recent, yes, and it is commenting, it is addressing what is happening at present that has links to colonial experiences. And so I do not know which theory is better for this, except the one suggested by my colleague in the Center for Migration, Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. Then he raised a point about the other words that I have excluded. I think in a presentation like this, there is normally this issue of delimitation of the scope of the work. So if we excluded, if I excluded other things in this presentation, other words in this presentation, is just because of the delimitations that was guiding my mind in selecting this work. And maybe the popularity of these novels got me carried away that I forgot other things. So then, which other thing? I think these are the things that I can remember about. I mean, I have taken down. These are the things I have taken down. And the number of novels, too. Why I delimited it to 4 is because.
All right, Dr. Sai.
Yes, bro.
Thank you for all you could capture there. And if there's any other thing left, I'm sure somebody will point it out. But let me quickly say something. This inequity and inequity, as I can see, those two are actually pronounced the same way. Iniquity, inequity, whatever, are the same pronunciation, and they virtually mean the same. So if you really think what you mean is different, please do well to put it in your definition of term, you know, or if it is an operational definition, put it there in your work, please, so that it can be very clear. Prof was right. And both of them are simply about injustice, wickedness, not being fair. Except you mean something else entirely, then please you let us know. Take care of it in your work. Thank you. Then
all right, I take your points. In the body of the work, I will try to integrate it and make it very, very clear. Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Can I say a word? Are you hearing? Thank you. Thank you very much. You are hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, Prof.
I'm glad that the director has made clear this distinction between inequalities, right? Because I was really confused. I didn't know which of them was referring to. But in terms of meaning, they are fairly very close, except that one is more extreme than the other. I just want to congratulate the HOD of philosophy for making the point about the achievement of the department since we came in. And we still appreciate Professor Adamu as VC, who made it possible for the department to be established. So we really cannot, that is history. We cannot run away from that. It made it possible for the department to be established. In fact, he encouraged us. And in spite of his ideas about philosophy, which I really think is not very serious about, philosophy being ideas of dead people and so forth, it's not serious about that. It can be serious because it is not true. I want to thank the director once again for appreciating our participation. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for always being here with us. I really enjoy the webinar when the two professors are here, Professor Abdallah and Emeritus Professor Sogolo. They always make it, you know, really interesting. And of course, Professor Tijani will not put his own history winding us and we are casting our mind back. So when those three are there, I know it's a beautiful day. Thank you so much for all your contributions. And I thank the presenter of today because he willingly put himself up to take this presentation. No cohesion, no pleading, no force. So I really appreciate him. And at a very short notice, he made himself available. And you can see that we have been on this topic now for almost 2 hours. Over 1.5, almost 2 hours, yes. And it's interesting. So thank you so much, Dr. Sai, for this presentation. I saw that the former DVCTR came back later, but then other people were already engaged in, I don't know whether the say she wants to put
No,
across.
thank you very much, Director. Just want to thank you for acknowledging my presence and to say that I'm glad to be back and to be part of the activities. And I commend the Vice Chancellor for the support to that ensured continuity of your center and your activities. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Prof.
so much. And welcome back home, fully back. We have taken our own back, possessing our possession. And welcome. She went away for a long time and we missed her. So thank God that she's back. And thank you so much. I don't know, for 1 minute, the presenter may want to just round off. 1 minute, the last word you have before we say bye-bye to everyone. Presenter, anything? Or you are good?
Well, on my part, before he says so, I'm saying bye-bye because I go to the mosque right now. So thank you, everyone.
We are already going
looking forward to
thank
seeing
Dr.
forward to
Sai,
seeing
looks
you
like
another time.
you are okay. So
I'm
we
very
can.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, as we started with him, on behalf of him, I say bye-bye to everybody, and that by his grace, next month will be another gathering. Thank you so much. And
merci, au revoir.